Although the big game is over, we have some big news. Old Southern Barbecue is extending their playoff platter special through March Madness. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce for just $89.99. So if you are hosting any of the big sporting events coming up, make sure to order the playoff platter and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in-store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.
Good comments here.
I didn't
like
know.
this guy is classic. We're here with Brian Willson, Section 3 breakdown. Really excited to dive into it. Ted coming in hot to this interview. Ted, I heard you're at a dinner. Where was dinner this evening? Is this an early Valentine's Day? Is this what are we working with? What's the setup here?
No, it's I went to brackets. Wife wanted to go brackets, so we had conferences tonight. So it was just, there was a lot going on today. I actually volunteered in kindergarten class today for the 100th day of school celebration.
Okay.
So we had conferences, we had a lot going on, and we got done with conferences and we're like, oh, like what's the plan for dinner? And
so was it like, did the kids do good? Like we're celebrating, or it's like, hey, we're having a sit down dinner here and we're going to talk about what the teacher just said.
No, they're doing great. But yeah, we it was kind of a last minute decision, and I'm like, I think we can make it home by 7 to record, but it was 7:01, so I appreciate you guys' patience on that.
Yeah, no, big patience by us. Shout out to me and Brian here. Expect nothing less, from the kids. Glad they had a good report. I'm not surprised though. Not surprised. I would expect nothing less. Brian, welcome to Down the Alley, where we talk a little bit of lacrosse and a lot of everything else.
Of course, I'm happy to be back on. It's been a 2-year hiatus, but I'm always excited to get back on and talk to you boys about lacrosse. So
yeah, this is your second run here. What did we have you on the first time for? Just we were begging for a guest, or what that week?
That was Section 3 review 2 years ago. My first year as a head coach.
Yeah.
So
we had you. You're basically the Section 3 source.
Nah, we're heading that way. I don't know how I got blessed with that opportunity, but we're heading that way. So,
well, it's a high paying position. Section 3.
What did we call this? Was this the people section last year?
Always been the people section.
Always been the people.
Always the people section.
So Section 2 is the
section of Main Streets.
Section of Main Street. This is the people section.
100%. So
what's Section 1?
Well, I don't know yet.
Think about that. We're gonna have to come up with something.
Yeah. But Brian, you've been in the section now. This is year 3 at Hastings.
As a head coach, I was an assistant for 6 years before that, just various roles of doing whatever. You know how the assistant game goes. You do something different every other year. So
yeah. So a long time coach in the area, in the section. I know teams have come and gone probably, but something like, we call it the people section. I think the last couple of years on both the boys and the girls, but we'll focus on the boys obviously right now. It's been a really competitive section where we kind of get to, the end of May, like early June, and we're kind of like, anybody could win this section. There's a lot of competitive teams, not any that like usually jump off the page is going to be dominating. But there's like a lot of really good teams. I mean, this past year, 3 of the 4, I think, were in the top 10.
Yep.
So like really competitive, and just kind of echo the same thing with the girls as, we'll get into it later, but, Eastridge, on the girls' side was a 5 seed that went to state last season or 2 seasons ago. So it's been one of those sections that has been really wide open, and it's kind of anybody's game every year.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of piggyback off that. It's always one of those, if you don't have a horse in the race or anything like that, if you have nobody who you need to necessarily root for, it's always a fun game to go and watch, especially section finals or semifinals. I mean, 2 seasons ago, that that Cretin Derham Hall Egan game went to, I think, 2 or 3 overtimes.
Yep.
Where we got to see Eddie Keelkop's coming out party for a lot of the state. So it's always interesting. It's always fun. Last year's section final was Egan and Eastridge, and it's a 10-12. Even though 10-12 in some instances sounds like a high scoring game, I expected that game to be 19-20, honestly, with the way that those two teams run their offenses. But it's always fun. It's always competitive, and it's always a dice roll who's going to come out on top.
Looking back at Section 3, what what's the history at the state tournament been? How has the section fared? Once they get to the dance.
I mean, I don't probably 2017, obviously with that Egan team. That was my first year ever coaching, and that was my first ever section game was against that 2017 Egan team. And I mean, we got 3 goals, like we accomplished. I mean, we lost 20-3, and we got one of our seniors to score who had not scored a goal his whole entire career, scored a goal. Like, oh well, I mean, I guess that's the one positive we can bring from that game. But I mean, that's my first real, talk about a trial by fire, your first time coaching on a varsity program, and you're going up against in a section playoff game against an Egan team, and it's that 2017 Egan team. Other than that, I mean, really no deep runs. I know that year that Cretin went, that they lost a pretty close one to Lakeville North. I do know that their goaltender injured himself during that game, and that played a huge part. And then last year, I don't remember, did Egan win their quarters or no? I don't recall off the top of my head.
No.
I'll get it. Hold on. I got it right here. Egan did lose to Eden Prairie 8-6 in that quarterfinal game, but I do remember that being a good game. I don't remember if it was one or the other. But yeah, I mean, yeah, because I can remember that because it was 4 red teams in the quarters last year for states with Stillwater, Lakeville, Eden Prairie, and Benilde. So
And I believe Egan went on to win consolation, right? They won.
yes, they did. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so like
Yeah, that's hardware.
They were a
Yeah,
top
that's
5
hardware.
team last year. They were in and out of the top 5, and like they were top 10 probably the whole year. And then obviously, won 2 games at state. So like they belong there. They deserved it. And like a close quarterfinal game.
Yep.
And so yeah, like I feel like Section 3's kind of had a 4-5-ish team every year coming into state.
Yeah. Where
Yeah,
yeah,
and just
it's go ahead, Austin.
Oh, I was just gonna, as we talk about some of the other teams, in this section, it is interesting as you look throughout the years. It's not a section where it's one team year after year representing the section. St. Thomas Academy, they've had runs. Egan, obviously state champions. Not too long ago. Woodbury, as you guys are starting to talk about, but last year. Now Eastridge, starting to pop off and have a squad, amongst other, competitive teams such as CDH. So like it's team after team after team in this section who has had a state run, in some cases, not just 1 year, but multiple years. So I think on the theme of the people section, it's everyone's, they share it. It's good battles. And, like I said, to kind of begin this rant, it's not just one team year after year.
No. And the other thing too is I always feel like it's reverse east side bias, but I feel like it's a lot of these teams get overlooked. I'm like, especially last year. I mean, going into that East versus West showdown that White Bear Lake hosted on that first day, where we had all those conferences playing each other with the Suburban East and that other conference where they had a chance to play against each other with these East versus West side games, and pretty much 50-50 split down the middle. And it wasn't like, the lowest teams on the east side was beating the lowest teams on the west side, but then the high end west side teams were beating the high end east side teams. I mean, there was a pretty good split right down the middle, and we got some early matchups last year. So I think, one thing is just making sure that we're always there. I mean, East Side teams make runs every once in a while. Matamidi has made a couple. You White Bear Lake, obviously you won that state tournament, right? I mean, there has been runs. I mean, I know it's a different section, but when you think of Blue Bloods of Minnesota lacrosse, sometimes you overlook like some of the stuff that started on this side just because it's easy to forget the west or the east side of the river. But I mean, that's fair. I get that. I understand. So
I think part of that is like kind of what PMAX said, is that it seems like every year it's a different team.
yep,
So it like you don't have like the dynasty section where it's like, oh, this team's won it 8 years in a row. So then you kind of forget about teams, even though it could be like an every 3 year thing where it's like every 3 years it's Woodbury, every 3 years it's STA. And so like I think there's a lot of good lacrosse on the east side, and there isn't the bias isn't always there because you don't see like, oh, it's Prior Lake, it's Prior Lake, it's Prior Lake, or it's EP every year where you're just getting beat over the head with them like at the
yep.
big stage. And so I think that's a good point. Yeah.
But it also makes it super fun because there's coach speak, right? Every year the coach comes in the room and everybody they have the goal, and every year every coach shares the same goal, and it's one of those deals where you can actually say it and kind of feel like you can kind of believe what you're saying. Like legitimately every year there's 6 teams who can win this section on paper,
Yeah.
right? It's just a matter of will you be able to execute and will the kids be able to keep up? Is the depth there? More importantly, what kind of injuries are going to put behind? Oh, that's the one. That's probably the one knock I will put on the east side is there's just not the depth there is on the west side. A lot of these east side teams are probably 1 or 2 injuries away from being a 1 or 2 seed in the section to being a 5 or 6 seed in the section. So
Interesting. Interesting. As we, kind of start looking forward to this upcoming season, start breaking things down, first, is there any new teams in the section and or teams leaving the section? And then also, any big coaching shifts in the section, any new head coaches or, anything to note in that department.
I know that Daniel Lipkin took over for Aaron at Two Rivers St. Paul Co-op. Um, so he's kind of taking that headstrong there, and I think Lip's more in the background, playing more of an admin role with that program. But he's always got 1,000 things on his plate, so that's understandable. But new teams, no, we're pretty much status quo. We've had the same 10 teams now for a couple seasons, which is super nice because I mean there's kind of a relationship now between all the head coaches, where we can the section meeting is still long, but at least it's that's cordial because you have to have the same meeting with the same guys next season. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Looking towards this upcoming season, some top contenders. It sounds like, or I'm gonna guess, we're gonna be able to put, maybe more teams maybe in this grouping than we did in the last couple of episodes. The first couple of sections we've discussed. Because of all of the points that we've made so far. So I'm just gonna kind of start at the top. East Ridge, number 1 seed going into the section tournament last year. This was a team that's been kind of building. And their window, obviously, they executed on their window being open last season, had a great year, came in at that 1 seed, made a great run, obviously, 2-goal game there at the end in the section tournament. Could have gone either way, but, Eastridge, a team that's gone in spurts. You had that Bixby era, kind of a goalie factory.
goalie factory for sure.
Historically, is this was this kind of a 1-year wonder, or is their window still open? I don't know. I'm not the source. What do we got? What are the notes? Eastridge, I'm very interested to hear about them to kind of start this conversation.
I think they're gonna still be competitive. They're not gonna have the undefeated season or that 12-1 run that they had last year. You know, I think that what we're gonna see is they lost their faceoff guy, Brandon Muth, who's an awesome faceoff guy. But not only that, he was a faceoff guy who could put points on the board, right? And that's huge in lacrosse, is having another midfielder, another body on the field that can score and be a two-way player. They also lost two other really good midfielders with Wyatt Reuter and Evan Hillmeyer, both two awesome midfielders, and I think they took a lot. I think they got as many points as they did is because you look on your depth chart and you see Oliver Stallsberg and Leo Stallsberg and Austin Griffith and Caden Barron, and those are your focus. So a lot of the time, those midfielders are getting the two or the second or the third midfielder on the field, and they're racking up points. If they have the depth of midfielders to really execute at that level, that offense is going to click. Face-offs in general. They have another Fogo coming in with William Middlecamp, who's an awesome Fogo. Seen him a little bit in off-season work, and I really like the way that he works. Some could probably argue, I don't know if there's many, but you could argue that it's not. It's kind of a net neutral when it comes to that and that department for actually facing off. Another thing with Eastridge is they did lose a lot of defense, and I'll probably speak about that on a couple different teams here today. But they did lose a majority core of their polls. So having some good polls on that back end and having really some leadership on that back end, especially when your goalie's a sophomore. Granted, he's a stud, but now he's gonna have to step up into a position and be a defensive leader because that leadership's not there. When you're a freshman and you're a goalie, it's super hard to sit there and being a leader because you're talking to guys that are basically adults and you're 14 years old. So it's a weird spot. So it'll be interesting to see if Shans can step up into that role, who's that goalie there. But more importantly, I mean, it's just going to be, can they put up a bunch of goals, right? I mean, that offense is lethal with a bunch of lefties, a lefty shooter and Austin Griffith, an Air Force commit, and Caden Barron. It's a super interesting team to watch, and I'm excited to see what they do. But I will see them coming back down a little bit this season. So
I got the chance to see them like in person last year early in a scrimmage, and you would think with like the skill that they have and with their face-off dominance, excuse me, that they would have been this like run and gun, fast-paced team, but they weren't. They were really organized and really structured and very methodical. And like so like they didn't uh, this is not a knock on them, but like they're not like an exciting team to watch, if that makes sense. But like when you go against them, it's 1-0. Then it's 3-1, then it's 7-2, and then all of a sudden it's 10-3, and you're like, how did they manufacture all those goals? And it was very calculated. The guys played their roles. I think why losing Wyatt Reuter is he was a big initiator for them. And like you said, he was maybe getting a short stick or whatever. I'll be interested to see who steps up to take that role. But yeah, like they get all their dudes back. And their goalie's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal goalie.
He's got a pretty solid coach there to coach him in season for goaltending. So
Yeah.
so um and
jumping to number 2 here, number 2 seed last year, Woodbury. I feel I have to pull up last year's preseason rankings. I feel like this was a team we were down on going into the season, and I feel like they shoved that right back into our faces. Had a great season. Unfortunately, again, kind of like Eastridge, they lost in the semifinals to a good Egan team, a battle-tested Egan team. In the semifinals, 10-11. Woodbury. I don't know if I can doubt them when they do that type of that type of punishment to our egos and to our credibility. Woodbury, what do we have on them in 2025?
So I feel like I constantly see this on the Discord, Twitter, sorry, X. My bad. But you see it all the time where you go to Lax, some dad, some whatever goes to Lax Hub, they pull up top points getters, they look at the number, they go to the roster, it's like, oh, they lost their point getter 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 5. Okay, well, they're gonna be down. they don't necessarily go look at that roster and like, okay, they lost their LSM, they lost their D pole, they lost, they lost, that's the problem with Woodbury this year. They keep all their offense. They keep Quinn Olson, they keep Max Henry, they keep Carter Nelson, they keep Sam Sanchez. It's just they lost all their top 5 poles, and they don't really have the depth there to fill it up. So that's I mean, granted they have 2 studs in the net, but if you're getting crease cranks from 6 yards away, it doesn't matter who's in net. You can put Liam Entenmann in the net. If somebody's gonna stand from 6 yards away and have time and room, they're gonna score goals in this game. So I'm curious to see what happens with Woodbury this year, because they need to make sure that they find ways to um, get around working with having losing all of their defense. So
They were in the preseason DTA top 10 at 10. So they did get some votes, but then they dropped out, and I think they worked their way back in at some point. Um,
So
one
we weren't as down. I'm a year off.
you're a year off, but I
Okay.
think,
Okay.
I do think Brian, it's a great point about like looking at the lack success. I was just talking to PMAC about this last night, of saying like it's really easy to look at Lax Hub and evaluate the offensive situation, but unless you really follow a team, and you don't know who their starting poles are and the roles they play, it becomes a lot more difficult to figure out like, oh, like, is this kid a contributor? Is this pole not? Like, he had 40 ground balls. What does that mean? Like, and like, does that mean he knows how to play off ball defense, or is he just good at getting ground balls? So, that's interesting that they lost so many poles, but now that kind of looking back and from seeing them play last year, they were a very like slow paced, like grinder team. Like they knew they did not need to score a lot of goals because their defense was not going to give up a ton, and
mhm.
they didn't need to like put any extra pressure on their defense. But 6-on-6, I felt like the way they played, they're like, we're fine playing 6-on-6. Like, good luck. And like they played a lot of low scoring games. They have two. You said two good goalies, right? And they're the same
Yep.
age.
They're both seniors. They have Jack Vasterling, and then they also have Evan Herman.
Okay.
Both seniors. One of them was committed to Maryville. One of them was committed to Elmhurst. I mean, you have
Yeah.
2 goalies on the same roster as seniors who are committed to play. I mean, that's pretty unheard of.
Yeah.
They're fantastic goalies, good dudes. So
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big point, though. I mean, to lose your whole defense, I think Woodbury to me has always been sort of an athletic, gritty group that's like well coached, and they play smart lacrosse. So hopefully, if they have some athletes coming up, they can work them in um, and get that defense back to serviceable. But I still really like what they have on offense. I think they're going to be hard to play against with the offensive skill that they have.
mhm. Yeah, it'll be interesting because like you said, they do like to control the ball. So they might just say, hey, let's grab the ball. There's no shot clock. Let's control this for 7 minutes of a 12-minute quarter and take a shot. So they've done that before. I mean, we've played them in the past, and we've it's been a 6-4 game going into half, and they just controlled the ball for half of it, and we scored goals on fast breaks because we knew that we're gonna have about 2 minutes of possession time this game. Let's score when we have an opportunity. Let's push off the rush. And but yeah, you're right. They might just win that face off and say, hey, we're gonna just give the ball to our ball carriers and not let go of it. So
Everything that was said about the 2 seed, once we get to this 3 seed, Egan, I think it's going to be the opposite in terms of the way they play, in terms of basically everything that was said. Think opposite. So Egan, the Wildcats, the 3 seed going in, they pull off a couple of upsets and make a state tournament run. However, when we were talking about going down, I'm going to be the lacrosse dad. I'm going to be the lacrosse dad, and it's going to go to Lax Hub right now. And I'm going to look at the players that they lose, especially on offense, especially their number one scorer, one of the best players in the state, one of the best athletes, pure athletes that I've coached against at the high school level, Sam Simon. He and then their Fogo as well, I believe, graduated. those are going to be two very, very hard players to replace at key positions, and the way they did their business. Two very good players, lost to graduation. I'm sure you guys will have more notes on them, but yeah, shout out to those two kids. Those guys, studs, studs. What do you guys have on Egan?
Here, Egan is I've coached for 8 seasons, right? Because it's my ninth. 4 out of my 8 seasons, I've lost to Egan in sections. So they are my, like, I always, there are years where I doubt them. You look on paper, like, this is a down and out Egan team. 2022, we played them at home, had the 4 seed, they had the 5 seed. We're ready to go. I thought I got a good speech for the boys. They're ready. They're fired up. They're on the field, and we're looking at our phone, looking at the watches, looking at the stopwatch up there. It says 20 minutes till game time. Where's Egan? Where is Egan? They roll up 20 minutes before the game. Just no sound, not a word, not anything. Nobody said anything. There's no chatter. They're walking off the bus in full gear off this bus, right? If I remember correctly, that section meeting was a little dicey. I don't think they were too happy having the 5 seed, right? They come off and they don't say a word. They just go straight to their sideline and they immediately start right into warm-ups. Don't say a word, nothing, no cordial, no handshake, nothing. They just go right to work and just pound us. Pound us. We were high, we were ready to go. We sound like, oh, this will be interesting. This will be interesting. We had a coach get ejected like 6 minutes into the game over a call that was questionable. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. So if there's anything I will never do and have refused to do since then is count Egan out, because they always find a way to just create athletes and create a team that wants to win. I don't know what it is, what the culture is there, but they're never out of it. They're always in it, And then they went on that year, that Woodbury with the Hooley, when they went to state, they only lost to Woodbury 11-10 in that section semifinals. So they've always been just one of those teams who competes. Egan is one of those teams, regardless of who's on the field, they find somebody, they put them on the field, and they score a bunch of goals for them. I don't know what it is. And back about Sam Simon, that kid, that specimen is one of the best lacrosse players I've seen on the field. I don't know. I mean, I had two of my better polls come up to me like, I don't know how to stop this guy. I've tried everything. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do about missing Sam and a couple of their attackmen. And again, I'm kind of totally contradicting myself compared to the last Woodbury comment, but looking down the stat sheet, I mean, there's a lot of holes to fill there. And I'm sure Coach Tony is going to find a way to fill those holes, and he'll have a team ready to compete in that gritty South Suburban Conference. So
you're absolutely right on all those accounts. Of my head is saying one thing, because I'm looking at a write-up I did from a few months ago. They lose 81.6% of their offensive production. They lose their LSM, who is a beast, Cullen O'Leary, a
yep.
couple polls. They get Ethan Wallach back, 35-33 last year, so 60 point. Their next highest scorer had 1 goal. So that's their next, like, kind of biggest contributor. So they are going to be looking for some new guys to replace production. But my heart says the same thing you said. I thought after 23, I was like, they got Sam back, but like they had that huge 2023 class. They're done. And they were even better last year than they were in 23. The Cardiac Cats, they love winning with like less than a second left in the game or in overtime. If they weren't a conference foe of mine, I probably would say I'm a fan of them. Just like you get the price of admission going to Egan games, because they're going to make it interesting. So yeah, they're a really interesting team to me. I don't know, they lost 350 points from last year, so it's going to be an interesting puzzle piece for them.
I feel like they like that, though. I feel like they like being the down and out, the underdog. Don't think about us. Let's talk about the South Suburban. You want to talk about your Prior Lakes, your Farmingtons. No offense, boys, but we'll just sit in the back, and when it comes time to put our money where our mouth is, we'll show up and play.
So you're saying, you're saying Coach Tony's gonna listen to this and go, got him right where we want him.
Yeah, that's exactly like, oh, it's he's surrounded by enemies. I got you right where I want you, kind of a deal. So, I respect the heck out of that program too. I mean, you have to, I mean, I've overlooked them in the past and gotten burnt over it,
Yep.
So it's one of those deals where you just gotta find ways to not do that or not count out, just always be learning and don't count out anybody you play against. So
Number 4 seed, Cretin Durham Hall. I was looking at the MSHSL website. It says a 8-0 game. It's incorrect. Incorrect according to Lax Hub. I've got contradictory reports. I assume it was a 8-6 loss to St. Thomas Academy. One interesting note as I look at the CDH schedule, their last game of the regular season was against St. Thomas, beat them, and then they had a tight, that was a 2-goal game, another 2-goal game, this one being a loss against STA 8 days later. That's interesting. I don't know how often you see that, but interesting point. CDH, it's a team that I never really played against or have really coached against. But it's a team I've kind of started rooting for after that goalie performance a couple years ago. I know I'm not a private school guy, but I feel like if I'm gonna be, it'd be maybe CDH. I don't know. Again, I know nothing about the school. I don't know what their culture's like. A couple coaches over there, but CDH. What do we have on them? They had their Cinderella story a couple years ago. Maybe fell a little short. To maybe where they wanted to be last year. What do we got?
I'll say this about Cretin, right? A couple years ago when Luke Charlton was a junior after he left Hastings, I went and there's still. I know that was a private family decision, but regardless, he was still one of the kids I grew. I coached and coached him while he was growing up. All three of the Charlton boys. So I went and watched one of the games at Cretin Durham Hall. I think it was the section semis against or section quarters against Eastridge that year at Cretin, and I'm sitting on the sideline, and the softball coach is coming over, the baseball coach, the golf coach. You're just sitting there and you're seeing all these coaches come up and support the team that's on campus, and I feel like that's a really unique kind of a deal where you have this culture. The softball team comes back from winning their section final, and they immediately come off the bus and go to the sideline and watch the lacrosse game. I feel like you get a little bit of that with other schools, but it was just super interesting to watch and see. There's a culture there of it. There's athletes, right? They find athletes and make them into lacrosse players. And that's something I like to say I do at Hastings too, but it's a little different there, right? It's a different type of athlete going to Cretin Durham Hall. So I mean they've got the pedigree of always producing top tier athletes, right? Regardless of what sport is there, they have it on paper to show that they have that, right? So I it's another one of those teams where you just don't count them out, right? And I know that Matt's done a really, really good job with that program where I think the first year he took over, I mean, there was 40 kids out, and now he's pushing the point where he's got, a full varsity, full JV. I know that the St. Paul private schools work together to have a good middle school programs for these teams too. So it's interesting because now he's starting to get a little bit more of a feeder system and not necessarily, oh, you're a defensive lineman, you can run pursuit angles. Here's a deep hole. Go take somebody's head off. You have actual smart players, and you can see that too, right? And talking to some of those kids, watch them in Winter League, having conversations. A couple kids that I'm just like that they lost two good players with Luke Charlton going to Maryville and Aiden Siegfried both going to Maryville, right? I mean that's a really good point producer. And then you also lost Jack Murphy on their attack line as well. And their best pull on the field is their goalie right now. Beck Lewis, the Swiss Army knife when it comes to lacrosse, is playing goaltender for them because after Keelkop left, they needed somebody to put in the net, and Beck's like, I can try. I played it a couple times when I was younger, and he's a pole committed to Canisius, but he's playing goaltender his senior season. It's just one of those things. Like, it's crazy. What an athlete.
Yeah, and
And
he
we
had
love
a
to see that.
66% save percentage last year.
He's a good goalie too. So, and he's a southpaw. So I mean, we love
Yeah.
to see that. It throws shooter off every once in a while. So, and then a couple other players. Their face-off guy Nate Charlton is a good athlete too. He's a gritty, get in your face goal. I know that during that St. Thomas game last season, during the regular season St. Thomas game, St. Thomas pulled their goalie out to run the double, and Nate scored And after he scored, he looked one of the St. Thomas goalie right in the face and gave him a salute and just walked away. And he's just one of those kids who's going to score, get in your face, and put his money where his mouth is, and he's not necessarily disrespectful about it, but he's going to let you know that he's better than you. And it's super fun to see that competitive edge in a kid who's not disrespectful to the point where he's, it's like Nathan Long, right? You want if you boo him, he's going to put 15 up against you.
Yeah.
So, and then another player I'm excited about and see on that team to see grow a little bit more the year is Danny Runyon. He's a little bit lower on that depth chart or scoring. I know that he had an injury last season, but he's one of
Does
those
his
kids.
family own Runyons?
That's a great question. We
I
should
hope they
probably.
do. I hope they do.
Are we going for a third sponsorship on the pod to
I
start pumping
I
Danny Runyon's tires, get the Runyon sponsorship?
I don't know if we can. I don't know if we can do another restaurant sponsorship, but maybe some sort of partnership. Maybe a giveaway. Maybe a coach's social.
I'll
Having some wings.
Maybe a
I'll-
Hot Ones episode.
a Hot Ones episode. I'll give. Well, that might be a question for Mr. Horrigan over in the concrete jungle. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cretin's an interesting team, like you said. Like they always seem to have, they can put 10 good players on the field. They play hard. Nate Charlton. I mean, he's like one of my favorite non-Farmington players in the state. Like we scrimmaged them early in the season last year, and he was such a pain in the ass to coach against. But like I kind of left that being like, what a grinder, like just a competitor, skilled, tough. He's like everything you want in a guy that you're gonna give the ball to and expect to do, expect to produce. So he's interesting, and Danny Runyon only a freshman last year, so he's got a long way to go, and he had 25 points, 22 goals, so he's someone that I think, like you said, maybe if a year older, he won't get banged up as much, being a year older.
The number 5 seed of this tournament, STA, they upset CDH like we just discussed. Before running into the buzzsaw of Eastridge. STA, I feel like it's been a program. They're not a new staff anymore. They're probably in year 3 or 4-ish, give or take. If I had to guess off the top of my head, kind of rebuilding the program. Had a decent season last year. I personally don't know if this is I get a sense that it's a program back on the rise, but I don't know much about this program, to be honest. From a behind the scenes standpoint, what have you guys seen out of STA, and is this a team that could maybe climb the rankings in this section in 2025?
I think the door is open for STA this season with going back and talking about Eastridge and Woodbury, like losing some of that stuff on the side of the ball, right? Interesting to see what game plans are going into this, right? I do know that on paper, St. Thomas lost Gabe Meistering, who's their goalie, right? He was one of the better goalies I've ever seen, a competitor, awesome goalie, right? So seeing how his backup adjusts to varsity level shots will be interesting, right? Especially in St. Thomas's conference, right, where we play too. Like it's not the South Suburban, right? It's not like competitive wise, like, and that's not a knock on my own program or the programs around me, but it's just sometimes the JV teams are made up of an 8th grader who got a lacrosse stick last week, and that the difference between a varsity level shot and that is pretty substantial. So seeing how that goaltender adjusts, I know that they did lose their faceoff guy, but I don't think his faceoff guy was as dominant as a Brandon Muth at Eastridge. I know that for a fact, or as dominant as when they lose Nate. When Cretin loses Nate. So, they also did lose Antonio Padre, and would trying to see how to replace and implicate that and get some attention off of Luke Hudson. Because on paper right now, all I'm thinking about is just throwing some doubles on Mitty Huddy, so it'll be interesting. And they also have a stellar LSM, right? And there's one thing you can always count on at some of these Section 3 games is you're a couple cheat codes away from winning a section tournament, right? I mean, if you have 2 or 3 cheat codes on your team, you can walk your way into a state tournament in here. So it'll be interesting to see how Max does this year and steps up into a senior leadership role. I know he was a leader on the field last year as a junior, but even more so, he's the guy now. So
Yeah, Max Cannon, I think, headed to St. Joe's next year. And yeah, Luke Hudson is a Bucknell commit, I believe.
mhm,
Um,
I maybe
and yeah, they got a handful of guys that are like Division I talents. But like you said, there's some pieces that will need to be filled from graduation. Specifically the goalie. That's where my eyes go. I think Gabe had been their goalie since since his
yeah
ninth grade year.
yeah
So they've had like steadiness there, and they'll need to find someone to replace that.
The 6th seed, your squad.
yeah.
I'm gonna let you take the floor.
We are rebuilding, just straight up. I we have we have talent as juniors and we have talent as sophomores. Okay, we our depth is not where I'd like it to be, but you could ask any coach that any season, he'd probably say exactly that, right? You always want to build your depth. You always want to make sure it's easy to say next man up mentality when the next man up is it's not his first year playing, right? Or his second or third. Um, Cole, I mean, just we lost an awesome defender in Brady Nickel, right? Awesome pole. Was a really good athlete, worked his butt off on the field, and a couple other players too. We lost a really good point getter in Wyatt Veith, who is one of those kids who, honestly, if MSHSL was a box league, he'd be the best player in the state because he just is. I think he had one move and it was a bull dodge, and he was a big dude and he'd get right through you. You know, he was fast, he was strong, and he just pushed the ball towards the cage and a lot of inside finishes. Um, and then we also lost Ryan Clemens, who's not going to be. He's just a well-rounded player defensively and offensively. Lots of ground balls, lots of mediocre assists, mediocre goals, but one of those really well-rounded players and a leader too, right? Always the guy that. One thing I always try to emphasize with the kids is as they get older into their senior and junior years, like I'm not your like we need to start treating you guys like adults, right? So I just go to my captain and say, hey, instead of 7 years ago when I started coaching, here's the list. Here's who's got waters. Here's who's got balls. Here's who's got whatever, right? And you have a list and a name assigned to that. I just tell my seniors, hey, we need this, this, and this done. Get it done, basically. And Ryan was always the one that would facilitate that and delegate roles to kids. So I never really had to worry about delegating roles, even off the field stuff. I know that's not a big deal, but it kind of is because it shows on the field too. Because then you have kids who respect him on the field, will listen to him, and it's one of those deals where he's going to be super sorely missed. So it's interesting. We're in a really interesting spot. I mean, but then again, not anything can happen in the section, and I don't necessarily know if we're going to be making Cinderella runs, but I'd love to see it, and I'm going to give the boys all the hope they can. We've had some good players. We got players that work in the off season, right? They're constantly in shooting in the off season, talking to other players from other teams. I know that a handful of Hastings kids and Simley and Cretin and Woodbury kids and Eastridge kids all kind of work out together and like shoot together. So there's a good camaraderie between those guys, and it's interesting to see how all these boys were going to work, right? And I'm not going to sit there and name individuals on my team right now, just because if I call out one, I feel like I got to call out every single kid on the team, and I feel like I'd be playing favorites, and I don't want to do that. But overall, there's a handful of kids where I'm excited to see what the off-season work is going to look like for them in the season, right? Because what you really want out of what you want is you want an example, right? Let's say that kid who's been grinding his butt off all off season comes in and he's your top point producer and he's a cheat code on the lacrosse field. Okay, here's the example. Here's how we got there, right? Let's mimic this in the off season. Let's use this as an example. Let's continue to do what this guy is doing, right? So it'll be an interesting season for us to say the least. So
Um, we've gone through most of the section. Any kind of teams, that's kind of left. Is there any dark horse candidates that could, like you said, go on a Cinderella run, shake things up, maybe pull an upset in the quarters? Is there any upset alert program dark horses in Section 3, 2025?
I started writing down like how I'd rank the teams coming into this season, right? And what I wrote down after sitting there and like erasing names as putting a 1 by this number, 2 by this team, 3 by this number, you know, every team in Section 3 is a dark horse in their own way, right? Every team's got a chip on their shoulder. Okay, we look at Eastridge. They lost to Egan in the section final. Okay, I got a chip on their shoulder. You look at Woodbury. They're like, okay, we didn't perform where we needed to. We lost the game that we probably shouldn't have. Chip on our shoulder. Going on the list here, Egan. We lost all of our players. Chip on our shoulder. Right. We look at Cretin. We lost a lot of talent. We're the athletes. We're the concrete jungle. We're gonna go out and we're all go out and beat your butt every single night. Like chip on our shoulder. I mean, even on the bottom end, like we don't really talk about Park, but they've got some solid talent on that Park team too. With Bradley Johnson, Sam Reckinger is a name that's not going to be really said until probably into the season, and Jacobs Aranota, one of their polls. Like they have talent, it's always overlooked. I feel like if I'm Park and I'm hearing this conversation and we're talking about top six, I go, why not us? And even Simwe. I mean, Simwe made section final in 2021, and they're rebuilding. What Wujo's got going on there, where they're a young team. They're building. Every year I want one of these teams to surprise me in the best possible way, if that makes sense. And my long answer to a very short question is every single team in Section 3 is a dark horse in their own way.
I love
And
that.
and I think it's a super, super exciting section to be a part of. There's the one thing that I can honestly say about a lot of the coaches in this section is I'm good friends with them. I know friends are hard and few and far to come from in this, but a lot of them are good guys. And in a way, I'm rooting for these teams every single day in and day out. When I'm not playing you, I'm going to say some egregious things about the team when we're before the game in the locker room. But at the same time, outside of that, I want to see, my section. I want to see my section do well against other sections too. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's spot on that um you know the top teams in this section are kind of all a toss up, and the dark horse, the bottom half,
yep,
is all dark horse too, and toss up, and whoever just has it click. Um we've seen craziness in this section where it's like you said, any given night, any given playoff game, a team could win by 10 goals in the regular season and lose that same team in the playoffs.
hmm
And that's what makes this exciting. I think if you're somebody who listens to this, maybe don't have a kid that's playing, or you're not a player on a team or a coach on a team, and you're like, I want to follow a section. Section 3 for boys is one that I'm really bullish on, just for entertainment factor. A lot of good teams, and a lot of teams that, like you said, chip on the shoulder and can be right for an upset at any time.
for sure.
Uh,
And
th-
go
this
ahead.
year we aren't asking for rankings, per se, but do you have a bold prediction for Section 3, 2025?
I have two bold predictions
Hit
now.
me with both of them.
The number one seed will win the section because that doesn't happen often. I mean, it's happened. I mean, it's been a couple years since that's happened. Number two, Egan wins the section somehow, some way, shape, or form. They find a way to find some man child on the street and give him a short stick. Like, hey, you're a number one attackman now, buddy. Have fun. So those are the two bold predictions that I have got at least.
So
I
by Newton's law, you just stated then with your two bold statements, then that Egan will be the number one seed and that they'll win the section.
one or
Those
the
are your
other,
two bold
one
takes.
or the other. I should reiterate that. I mean, I
Okay, no
don't.
Newton's law. No
No
Newton's
news
law on
on.
that.
We're talking lacrosse, not physics here, buddy. So, but but
Yeah,
no,
he's doing like the reverse psychology, the reverse affirmation, where he's like, yeah, Egan, man,
dude.
they're gonna surprise people this year. They're gonna make a run, just so that when he plays them, they're not gonna have as much of a chip on their shoulder. They'll be like, this Brian guy, he was really high on us. Really
That's
nice
that.
guy.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm that. I don't know how you read right through my bluff. That's crazy. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm a little jaded. You lose to them 4 times in sections. You're gonna pump their tires a lot because I just every year you look at that. You watch the film. You're like, okay, we have an answer for that, and then they come out and they do something completely different. Oh, shit. How are we gonna fix this? Um, Yeah, man, it's exciting section. It's always fun to see what can be accomplished, and lots of good stuff happening on the east side. And always fun. So
Brian, we appreciate you being the official now Section 3 source of boys lacrosse. Um, we appreciate your time, insight, and good luck to you, your team, and the rest of Section 3.
absolutely, thanks, boys.
Although the big game is over, we have some big news. Old Southern Barbecue is extending their playoff platter special through March Madness. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce for just $89.99. So if you are hosting any of the big sporting events coming up, make sure to order the playoff platter and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.
So we are welcoming Jeff Rosga, the CDH head coach from Section 3, our official Section 3 source going into 2025 this year. Jeff, appreciate your time, and thanks for coming down the alley with us.
Absolutely. I do have to give a shout out. My wife is a huge follower. She, really appreciates the show. Our Easter dinner last year was from your, what is it, Southern?
Old Southern
The
Barbecue.
Old Southern Barbecue.
Right.
So, I'm like, just to throw it out as you had on the sweatshirt. But yes, she certainly enjoyed the show and the different episodes over the years. So I did want to just commend you guys on what you do, and it's certainly entertaining.
I appreciate that. Yeah, looking into, girls Section 3, would just love to kind of look backwards a little bit, before we look forward. What's some of the recent history of Section 3? What are some of the teams that have, come out of the section and gone to state? And, is there a, we just got done on the boys side. It seems like on the boys side, there's a different team every year. Is it like that on the girls side, or is it more, maybe like some other sections where it seems to be the same team, year after year?
Well, I think you have certainly some of the stronger programs that we'll get into, but if I kind of rewind a little bit back in time, Section 3 at one point, meaning when I was the head coach at Two Rivers and the co-op with Gentry, and the quick story there was Two Rivers had just built their outdoor stadium. My daughter, who was going to school there, and also Two Rivers at the time didn't even have a lacrosse program in the high school, and she wanted to stay connected to her younger brother, who was 2 years younger, who happened to have Down syndrome, and he was going to school there as well. So she went there. We were fortunate to kind of get that co-op in place, and then served as a head coach there. And we lost to Rosemont, who had been in Section 3 for a few years. We lost in the section finals. That was 2021. Then they went on, and they've certainly had a strong program. And then they switched out. And then the last 2 years, in 20, what would have been 22, we went to state, meaning Two Rivers and Gentry, beating Park in the finals. And then Park again was in the finals in 23 and lost to Eastridge. And then last year they had come out, as the number 1 seed, and then had gotten upset by Woodbury. And then we faced Woodbury in the finals, and we're in the state tournament in 24. And then if I rewind, Cretin, I think the last time Cretin Derham Hall had gone was back in 2019. So there had been a little bit of a gap there. But if you think of some of the historically Woodbury, Simley, CDH, Park, Eastridge, I've always kind of been able to make that run over the last few years and have built, some pretty strong programs on the east side. And in addition to like the Stillwaters that are on the east side as well, and have certainly built a strong program over the past few years.
Yeah, you've talked about, the shakeup in Section 3, Rosemount, leaving. As we look into 2025, any major shakeups in the section that is on anybody's radar, or any big coaching changes, that's on anybody's radar?
Well, I know there has been some coaching changes. I know the head coach stepped down from Hastings, Ivy from Woodbury, had stepped away. And then, there was changes, I believe, at Visitation as well. Two coaches at Visitation had stepped away. So, there has been a little bit of turnover, certainly in the section. But from the section teams, all the same teams are still in Section 3 that were in it last year.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So as we look kind of into 2025, kind of talking about some of the, top teams, I'm just going to kind of go based on 2024 section seedings. And we can kind of just see where the conversation goes. But last year, kind of going into the tournament, Park, the number 1 seed, like I think you mentioned, talking, looking back, seems like Park has kind of been on the rise, has come in the last couple of years as, a top seed or one of the more, higher seeds in the section. I don't know if they've ever gotten over the hump and gone to state. Maybe I don't know off the top of my head. Park, is their window still open, do you think, to continue to make runs, or is this maybe a year they take a step backwards?
I think Park has as good a shot as anybody. I think Park has with, when you think of who they have coming back, they've got Maddie Brinkman coming back, who was one of the leaders, certainly in the section in goals and draw controls. She got some state honors. You have Josie Leonard, who's back as well for them. And then they had a young goaltender, and this Lauren Ernstrom, who kind of burst onto the scene. And what makes Park interesting and challenging is, like you said, they've been on the doorstep a handful of years to be able to go, but haven't quite made it over. This certainly could be their year. They've lost a couple key pieces, but they're still really strong, and a few girls that I just mentioned. They also play backer D, and that's not an easy defensive setup. But if you look, like if you follow Park, they're not a high potent offense, but they keep their goals against were 4 under 5. So they purposely are very strategic with what they do on the defensive end to draw you into mistakes. Having played them certainly in the regular season, having played them in sections, having dealt with them before, that's one of those things that they do some things that are fairly unique. And then they've got certainly girls that can put it in the net on the offensive end and given certainly an opportunity to win every game. And it was evident too, just if you look at their overall record last year, I believe it was like 13-2.
Is backer D, is that kind of a throwback defense? Is that making a resurgence, or is that just something, Park does and sounds like they do well?
Yeah, I think, they implemented a few years back. You've got to have girls that are good communicators. You have to have girls that understand concepts and how to carry through the, basically through the 8-meter and 12-meter, but not get caught in 3 seconds. If you're moving the ball really well, you can get them caught in some of those gaps and get shooting space. But it's not easy to do because it's not something that you see on a regular basis. I don't know so much as it's a throwback. You'll see some of the teams play it out east, especially some of the club teams that are more of the higher club teams. They'll introduce it and they'll put it in as just something to mix up from a man-to-man versus and then go into a zone. But they've had success with it, and I think they've stuck with it the last few years for that exact reason.
Yeah, we had their coach on a couple years ago. I think it's Josie Leonard's dad, actually.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna bring this up, Ted.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken, I might have to go back and listen to the episode, but he has a hoops background and maybe some of that basketball mindset with teaching concepts and teaching defensive coverages and help and all that. Um, I mean, maybe that's just like he kind of defaulted to a style of scheme that he knew kind of growing up and implemented and like blended that into lacrosse. Not that they don't have zone defense in lacrosse, but
Right.
just kind of built on that. And then they committed to it and it worked. And like you said, sometimes great defense is just about kind of scaring the offense a little bit and being like, we've never seen this. We don't know. They panic. And then like all of a sudden they can't figure it out and you buy yourself time. So, yeah, I'm gonna have to watch a game. I think that's interesting that they're kind of known for that.
It was
Yeah.
better you than me than bringing it up, but I was gonna bring up the same thing. I was like, one, I'm like, I'm certain he's been on the pod. And two, I remember him saying something about their defense. Like maybe we asked him a question of like what sets them apart or something like that. And I remember him talking about it. And it's definitely something like I don't think it's difficult in the sense of like the girls understand it. I just think it's so hard to implement multiple defenses in our high school season because the time is so short that like you kind of just run out of time. So if you've got the right personnel and it sounds like he knew he did that and you can execute like you said the communication is key and like the concepts versus more than just like your basic athleticism on D and Ted, you're right too. I think it's like that would throw us off, that's for sure. But like props to them that it's sticking out to you as another coach in their section.
Ted, any additional notes on Park?
I think we touched on it. Maddie Brinkman, Josie Leonard, two great stat lines last year. They're the big two. And, like Jeff said, I think they're going to continue to rely on their defense. And, the ball will be in the stick of one of those two girls to produce on the offensive end. And, they're both seniors this year and both committed, it looks like, to Division II schools. So, strong players that are going to be going on to play at the next level.
The number 2 team last year, Eastridge, a town that again, I don't know. We don't play Eastridge. Talked about that on the boys' side, but outside looking in, I just feel like it's a town that's adopted lacrosse and has just been building, building, building. The girls' team, looking at their record last year, had a great season, had a tight loss against the Soviets of Lakeville South, a close one against Park, and had a head scratcher against Stillwater. Before the section tournament. But overall, you look at their body of work. Great season. Eastridge, is the party just getting started there?
Yeah, I mean, Rich Lippert came in as a head coach there. He was actually on the boys' side for a number of years. He actually led the University of Minnesota for years, coaching that club lacrosse team. And then he's had a couple daughters that have come through. One that's playing down in Florida, believe it's at Palm Beach, and then he has his daughter Kira, who's going to be a senior. Who she's just an athletic force. I mean, she's strong, she's fast, she's tall, she's got skills in both ends of the field. She's very good, through the midfield and in transition. Then they've got, at least coming back, they did lose a couple girls through graduation that were strong players for them. But then they've got Chloe Garrett and Macy, who are, strong defenders for them. And so their offense and defensive units are usually strong from a strategy perspective, and they limit what you're able to do. They play very aggressive through the midfield as well. And so, I think Rich has brought over a number of concepts from just his coaching in the years in the boys game, and then brought some of those strategies and some of the things, because you can see some of the blend as far as things that they do on the offensive end. If you watch or around a lot of men's or boys lacrosse, some of the things that they do where they'll, start from high to low or low to high with the ball, and some of the movement things that are slightly different because you're playing with 6 in the zone in the boys game versus, 7 in the girls. And then you've also, you don't certainly have the 12 and the 8 in the boys, but how he spaces the field and some of the things he does. And so I expect, once again, they'll be a strong contender. and a strong force in Section 3.
The number 3 team going into sections last year, your squad, the Cretin Derham Hall, just like on the boys' side, the 3 seed coming out of the section had a great run through the section tournament, upsetting Eastridge, and then we'll talk about them later. A number 5 seed in the final. It's the people section. You never know what's going to happen. In section 3, both on the boys and the girls' side. Cretin Derham Hall. Can't wait to hear the insight into your program.
Yeah, Cretin Derham Hall certainly always an interesting program in regards to we're a private school in the city, and so from that what our team and where the kids are going to come from. A lot of people don't know, like, Cretin Derham Hall is a feeder to over 100 middle schools. Like 100 different middle schools have supplied kids to Cretin Derham Hall. So, from a standpoint of we get them from the east, we get them from north, south, city, naturally from the parochial schools. But it's certainly always a melting pot of the kids that you're going to be able to get. So it makes it fun, it makes it challenging, and it certainly makes it interesting as we go into each and every season. The other thing that makes it pretty unique is Cretin Derham Hall isn't a large school, compared to some of the others that are certainly in our section. And so with that, there's a lot of multi-sport athletes. And so, getting them to, engage from a lacrosse perspective, you got to get creative as far as how you get some of the girls out. And then you also got to be creative on how you lean onto, the kids that are more serious about the game and are laxers. And we've been fortunate because we've had a handful of those girls, rolling back to even when I came over to initially take the job 3 years ago, and I had Anna Stangler, Jane's older sister, and Jane's certainly going to be back and a senior for us. Is just an amazing kid and amazing talent. Is going to be going on to play at Niagara next year, so she'll be going to play Division I lacrosse. But she's just as much as a great lacrosse player, she's just an amazing human and great person for the team and a great leader. Jordan, my daughter, will be back as well. She is a freshman after a couple years of playing varsity and following in kind of her sister's footsteps. And then we've got some anchors in the defense with Lena Kronschnabel and Paige Johnson. That'll be back, and Paige is going to play in Jefferson University out in Philly next year. She's a senior. And Elena's been a multi-sport athlete, playing soccer as well as lacrosse and basketball. So, I think we'll be strong on the offensive end, probably balanced midfield. We try and stay pretty disciplined on defense. I'm pretty fortunate because I've had with me since I started coaching 6 years ago, I've had a continuity in my staff. So Ali Manelli-Fenstemacher, she was a Prior Lake coach and head coach for years, kind of put them on the map. And then, they've certainly become a continual perennial power, especially on the girls' side. And then, Paulina Sun, or now Paulina Williams, she did get married. She's been with me for the last 4 years as well. So that certainly helps, especially with the girls, as we start to build them into the upcoming season. So, we'll see what we can put together.
You talked about your daughter being young. Your goalie, another very young player that you're returning, and it looks like she had a great. I don't know if it was her first season. I guess I'm assuming it was her first season on varsity, but maybe not. What do you got coming back between the pipes?
Oh, Caroline LeClaire. We didn't know who our goalie was going to be. We had graduated our goalie the previous year, and she's playing at Concordia St. Paul. And so it was one of those, like I said, who was it going to be? And Caroline was actually a 7th grader and was amazing. I mean, so yeah, she'll certainly be back. Her sister Annie is coming back from shoulder surgery. I have some other young girls that are kind of up and coming with Elena's younger sister, Paloma Kronschnabel, Channing Haycraft, who's another good athlete. And then if you remember the name Lucy Solander,
Yep.
Lucy had played for a number. Her sister Lily is a freshman with Jordan. So, Jay, my eldest, had played with Lucy kind of growing up, and now it'll be sort of fun. Now we've got the two younger sisters that'll be playing together.
The number 4 seed last year, Simley, looking at their schedule, 7-7, had a bunch of, tight losses, tough losses against, some of the teams we've been talking about, higher level teams. They came in at the 4, and had a close one against Woodbury, Woodbury went on a run. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Simley, like we mentioned earlier, did you say they went to state in 2021, or was that on the boys' side? That was on the girls' side. Or did I just completely make that up?
I think Ryan mentioned they maybe went on the boys' side at some point.
Scratch what I just said. Simley, tell me more about Simley.
So, yeah, certainly seen Simley, although they're not in our conference. When I was at Two Rivers and Gentry Co-op, we played them in the regular season, certainly in sections. The Kowarski sisters, have been kind of a formal force for them. Maddie had been their head coach for a number of years, but I believe she moved to North Carolina, but she had really built that program at Simley. And, as their record indicated, they were in a number of close losses. I thought last year coming into sections, they would be the dark horse. They were the team to look out for. Them and Woodbury were two that, regardless of record, I didn't think the record was necessarily indicative of what they'd be able to do as they came in. The older Kowarski daughter has graduated, but younger sister, Courtney's still there. She's certainly a very strong, dynamic two-way player, can control tempo, can do a lot of things for them. I think depth will be their key. They have Josie Johnson, who's coming back as well from the midfield. So, from a standpoint of how they'll be this year, will they be a contender? I guess it's really hard to say because it depends who's filling in, with all the schools, I really don't have a sight line to the number of girls that are coming back, just some of the younger girls potentially that I've seen come up and then where they're going to be. So I think they'll be an interesting one to watch as the season progresses.
And the 5th seed, a team we've been teasing, I feel like all episode, came in, went on a run to the section final before falling to Cretin Derham Hall. Woodbury, it sounds like they were on your radar as a potential dark horse last year. A team and a program, a city. I feel like it's a lacrosse town for both boys and girls. Woodbury, are they another dark horse, or does everybody know about them now that they went on this run last year?
Well, I mean, they had a really strong, talented team last year. You had a number of girls, Kate Hooley being one that was a really strong player, and another couple girls that have gone on and are continuing to play. And then they've got Shelby Merrick, who'll be back, and she was one of the top goal scorers in the section last year. And then this Elizabeth Schuler who was on the defensive side. So they did lose some of certainly their horsepower on the offensive end due to graduation, and one of their strong defenders. So that's why, once again, knowing Ivy and what she was building there as their head coach, and then the talent that she had, even though we beat them in the regular season, then we're fortunate enough to beat them in the section finals. I never expected, we just got out fast on them, especially in the opening season game, and then they battled back. And, they were certainly a very talented group. Due to graduation, I think it'll be really hard to tell what they'll be this year, and especially because Ivy moved on, and so they'll have a new head coach as well. So it'll depend what they can do there.
Another note on Woodbury, Katie will like this. Their goalie, a senior, Peyton Fagel, had almost 60% save percentage last year, took a lot of shots, But I guess if you're going to lose a bunch of offensive players, it's nice to have a senior goalie come back that will be some stability on the back end to maybe kind of weather the storm early as some new players get up to speed.
And we've said it once, we'll say it again. You can't replace a Hooli.
It's hard to replace a Hooli.
A boy or a girl.
Yeah.
So for 3 years, we've been talking about that, and now it's
Yeah.
going to be tough to replace.
So section 3 here, from here, is there a dark horse, that we should be keeping an eye out for? When I feel when there's a 5 and a 3, it's like, okay, this is like anybody's section. But kind of outside maybe the top 5 that we've discussed. Is there a dark horse that maybe could go on a run, a Cinderella story, maybe just get an upset in a quarterfinal? Anybody that could make some, is there a team that could make some noise, in section 3 here?
One to keep an eye on would be St. Croix Prep. As far as a dark horse in the section, we opened up with them last year. We beat them pretty well at home, but they had some young talent on that team. And if you take a look at who they have coming back and some of their girls, and certainly in between the pipes as well from a goaltending standpoint, then they've got some girls that were younger on their team last year, but they also have some returning talent. And Veronica Ziemer is coming back, and so that's someone. She's very fast, athletic midfielder that I believe is going to be playing on next year, or is committed to play on at the next level. And then you've got Hannah Duffy, who's the goaltender, who's been their goalie for a number of years and just a solid netminder. So, from a standpoint of if there would be a dark horse, I would say St. Croix Prep.
I personally love to hear that because I've been rooting this team on. I proclaimed them my hedge fund team because of their logo. So I personally love to hear the St. Croix Prep potential dark horse. I will be on them early and often then, and I'll start pumping their stock now.
Yeah, and this Veronica Ziemer headed to Grand Valley State, and Hannah Duffy, the goalie that you mentioned, headed to UC Pueblo. Had a almost 60% save percentage last year as well. So, there's something to build off there. They'll be an interesting team to watch.
This year, we're not asking guests to rank a top 4 out of their own section, but would love to open it up. Do you have a bold prediction, or our last guest had predictions? Do you have a bold prediction for section 3 in 2025?
I think Park's going to be tough to beat. Park is going to come, like I said, they're the nucleus of their talent. Although yes, they graduated one of their key pieces. They certainly have girls that are back. Scott's built, meaning their head coach Scott Leonard has certainly built a system that works with the girls that he has. I think he would even self-admit that he was surprised how well his goalie, because I believe she was a 9th grader last year, played. And so I expect she's only going to get better and will be better as we come into this year. So I don't expect Park to fall off. I expect they're going to be the ones that this could be their year, because I know they've been on the doorstep for the last few years and not quite made it over the hump. East Ridge, once again, will certainly be strong. I think a couple of the others, I think it'll just be really unpredictable in section 3 this year. When you think of some of the impact of girls, like we lost Sophia Watts and Mara Slavich, and East Ridge, Sydney Myers, right, and Woodbury with the girls that we had already mentioned, and Sibley and Park losing some key contributors. Now all of a sudden, as your hedge fund, right, your dark horse, right, St. Croix Prep, they might be able to make a run because they're not in our conference. They're not in any of the other teams' conference. But coming into sections, it's, all it takes is one get hot one night. We were fortunate last year. Like I said, all of a sudden we went from we're on the road, if we're going to make it, to playing at home in the section finals, which was, first time ever for Cretin Derham Hall, and then being able to qualify for state. So, I think those will be, it'll be an interesting year, and I think you'll see some younger players that'll emerge as well, certainly in the section. That'll be fun to watch over the next few years.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the, up and coming, maybe even some of the stars of the section are on the younger side of things. So that's cool. It kind of seems like it's a big wave is coming for Section 3.
Absolutely.
Jeff, I want to thank you for coming down the alley as our official girls Section 3 source, and giving us the insight.
Let's not over embellish, Austin. I mean, come on now.
I got to put all the hot sauce and seasonings as I can on this. Good luck to you, your squad, and the rest of Section 3, this upcoming season.
Thank you. Katie, I hope you feel better.
Thanks, me too. I hope it doesn't last 3 weeks like it did in 2 weeks ago in January.
And thank you to Brian Willson and Jeff Rosga for coming down the alley. Two great breakdowns, for Section 3, the people's section. And I know more about the boys game. I pay more attention on the boys side, but it's very similar on the girls side. Like you've got low seeds making runs. You got lower seeds going to state tournament. I see a lot of similarities on kind of both sides of the ball. Boys and girls. It's a fun section. The people's section. I feel like this is a section on both sides. Anything could happen. Any team could come out. It's a section you just got to buckle up for and enjoy the ride.
I wasn't a part of the boys conversation, but it sounds like Coach Rosga's just as kind of eager to see who will come out of the section as we are. And I feel like an outsider being like, oh my God, it could kind of be anybody's. And I feel like we said that last year. And so it's very comforting to know that someone in the section kind of feels the same way. That we're like, okay, maybe we're on to something, or maybe we're on something of like, okay, there's like some major like chance here for a lot of teams. And it kind of seems like from the inside, coach feels the same way.
And like Section 3 for both girls and boys has been a toss up for like ever since we've started doing this podcast, basically. I mean, maybe not forever, but since 2021 or 2020, whatever year we started doing this, I feel like we say the same thing every year about Section 3. It's always kind of like, this could be anybody. I'm having a little bit of a hard time even ranking my preseason ranks.
So I was starting to think about that. I'm like, all right, I got to start, putting my rankings down. I haven't written a whole thing. I haven't written down, usually I'm taking notes. I'm going to ask. Conversation was fluid, with both guests. It's been easy. It's been fun, just going team to team all around, bumping around. And I was starting to think like, okay, I got to start putting a list together here. I've got no clue. I know one team on the girls' side that's going to be in the top 4. And that's my hedge fund. Other than that, I don't know where they're going to end up though on my top 4 list. I just know they're going to be in it.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like trying to buy some time here because I think I have my girls figured out, but on the boys side, I have no idea. And that's the side that I'm more in tune to, and I'm having a hard time coming up with 4 as well. So
to buy Ted time, Katie, since you're sick, since you probably want to get off this call, and go take some medicine and cuddle with Groot. Girls, top 4. What are you thinking? Give us some guidance. I want.
Yeah, I don't know if it's guidance, but the fact that a 5 seed upset a 1 seed.
Yeah, how do you rank it?
We're clueless. Like this will be the first of.
Well, we aren't. We didn't rank. We didn't make those seeds.
The cluelessness.
the coach isn't. No, I'm just
forward.
kidding. I'm just kidding. I won't go there.
I'm gonna go. 4. I'm gonna go Woodbury. 3. I'm gonna go Eastridge. 2. I'm gonna go Park, and 1. I am gonna go Cretin Derham Hall. I think I'm not just saying this because he was on our podcast, but I think it could be a toss-up between Park and CDH. But I think CDH is kind of going to start gunning for this section for the next couple years.
I've got my list ready. Hedge fund, they're in at 4. I'm gonna keep them at a dark horse spot. I'm not gonna be too biased. Best logo in the section, maybe the state. Eastridge 3, CDH 2, Park 1. I'm trusting the source we had on. It sounds like Park's a wagon. It sounds like they got a system in place. But Katie, I agree with you. I'm getting CDH on the rise vibes. So that's why they're my 2. Eastridge, it's a lax town. It's a lacrosse town. Ted, I'm buying you time. I
It
hope
really
you're using this
is.
time.
You
Eastridge
said that,
is a
and I like.
lacrosse town. And
Eastridge
hedge
is
fund,
not a
like I
town.
said, they're my 4.
Eastridge is not a town.
Yeah,
It's
Eastridge is not a town, but I get what you're saying, and I agree.
What if Eastridge isn't a town? Why are they called Eastridge? What's Eastridge?
It's like Eastview. It's like in Woodbury, but it's just
So it's
another high
big.
school.
Woodbury. It's the other
God,
high.
but
But that's
I
okay.
hate it. I hate
But you're,
Eastridge.
I
and
get
the
what you're
whole-
saying. That like you're right. They're kind of a like lacrosse town. Really,
but
they
they're
are.
not a town.
I
You
know,
know
but,
what?
like,
No,
I get
no.
what
We
you're
should
saying.
make T-shirts. Eastridge lacrosse town.
Yeah.
Eastridge is a lacrosse. They're not a town, but they're a lacrosse town.
I get what you said that, and I was like, gosh, they kind of are.
It's Lacrosse Town, USA.
Yeah.
Eastridge,
Yeah.
Minnesota, lacrosse town, USA.
We do have a really good PA announcer there. That's like
Oh.
super into it and like pretty good. So if
You
you
want
ever
to know what we didn't talk about for CDH is their stadium.
great stadium.
Great
And
stadium.
the fact that a couple years ago I picked their boys to win, and they still owe me a Juicy Lucy.
Oh,
Yeah, they'll cash it. Their
That
checks
was what?
cash.
When did they go to state? 3 years ago? 2 years ago?
yep.
2023.
Picked them to go. They will cash it. Have you gone over
Not
there?
even close.
Yeah,
I
so
literally haven't even
Not a
come
part of
within
town we go to. Yeah.
10 miles.
Meet me halfway, right? I'm gonna go St. Croix Prep at 4. We go Eastridge at 3. I'll go Park at 2 and go CDH at 1. CDH has kind of been playing with like 7th and 8th graders the last couple.
Right.
I feel like they're in
Right.
high school now.
They're finally a high school team.
I didn't want to get like too deep into it because like, Jeff was on the podcast, but like his daughter is an elite lacrosse player, and last year as like as an 8th grader was like one of the most dominant players in the game that I saw, and like obviously put up the points to back it up. Now she's in high school going against.
It was like she's been on varsity for 5 years.
And I get like lacrosse is a team sport and there's a lot of factors, but like I just think it's one of those sort of X factor players. But you could kind of say the same for Eastridge too with Kira Limpert. There's a lot of teams in this section that have a superstar player, and there's still like a lot to be like seen on what happens with sort of the depth. So I think that's going to be the story of who ends up coming out. But I'm going to take CDH to repeat. I think if they could do it last year, I think they can do it this year for the girls.
Over to the boys. If we thought the girls was hard to rank, Ted, I think the boys is twice as hard. Like once I started kind of going through the girls, I was like, oh, okay. I'm looking at the boys right now. I don't know what to I don't know what to think. I don't know if there's like a no rank option. I don't know if there's
such a different group of teams in this section on the boys' side.
a little bit, but kind of not. It's kind of the same.
Remember how cool the Ducks logo is?
Like they might make the top 4 just because of their logo.
Like they have I forgot about them kind of. I'll go first then because I'm a blind picker. I'm gonna go. Dang.
Oh, you got it.
See what I'm saying?
I wasn't even part of the conversation though. I'm gonna go. Did a Hooli graduate on the boys' side, or have we been missing
Yes.
a Hooli?
He graduated 2 years in 2022. He graduated.
Okay, so
He has been gone. He almost graduated college now.
okay, he's gone. So they're my 4.
Woodbury.
Did who graduate?
No,
Woodbury.
Did did Eastridge graduate anybody significant? Like a lot?
No, you're doing this blind. No more questions. You
fine.
said you're doing
I'm
it
gonna
blind.
I'm gonna go Woodbury 4. I'm not putting St. Thomas Academy in there. I'm sorry. I'm just not. There's such a. Oh, I guess is Viz in for the girls?
They're in the section. They're not.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, what? I guess I forgot that they exist.
Woodbury at 4.
Cretin Durham Hall 3.
Okay.
Eastridge 2, Egan 1. Egan to me is like an EP situation for playoffs. Like I think they come to play and I feel like they kind of squeak in.
So they're
Because
getting
they're
the
not
1 seed by sneaking in?
Yeah, because they're not in the girls section. So they're just so random in this section for me that I'm like, they must be good. They must be getting the 1 seed. But I always forget, like we do it by getting their rank. Like we're basically ranking them on how their season's gonna go.
Or just like, who do you think is the 4th best?
You're ranking them blind. Go take some medicine.
I know. I think I'm good with that though.
Yeah, that's not a bad it's not a bad ranking, honestly. I mean, that's as
I'm
good.
just basically going by where they were last year and assuming maybe they like lost a couple seniors.
There you have it. Katie's
I'm just gonna throw some at you. I don't know if it's gonna stick.
So mine is basically as good as yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yes.
On the same.
Yes.
I have mine if you need a minute.
Go. Yeah. Where's your head at?
I'm going to throw a bold flyer because I think this is the section to do it. I'm going to take Park at 4. I'm going to take Woodbury at 3. CDH at 2. Eastridge at 1.
Would I put Eastridge at 2?
Yes.
Yeah, Park. So Park boys.
They were not very good last year, but they do have some talented players, and Brian said they could be a dark horse. And
they're in the game. I like it.
I just think it's bold. It's very long shotty, but at the same time, like if any section's gonna have a surprise, section 3 is gonna have a surprise.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
I think, yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. It's controversial, because I'm leaving, STA and Egan out here. It was kind of between a handful of teams for maybe that 4 spot. But
don't worry, I left STA out on purpose, I got Egan, so
I'm sticking with that.
The only other section I feel like
I need to spit this out before I forget. No, go ahead, Katie. Actually,
what section is which is Andover in for the girls? Because weren't they like the 6th seed?
Yeah, they're in section 7.
So that might be another one for on the girls side, at least, that it's gonna be just. Maybe we'll find out something different. Go ahead, PMAC.
Eastridge 1.
4
to. Okay, we went 4-1, and now you're going 1-4.
1.
I have to start at the top. Okay. I was trying to go. I was trying to start at the bottom, but I couldn't. Okay. My brain wasn't working that way, and it's barely working right now. Eastridge at 1. I'm gonna lean in. Ted, I think you're right. Something's weird. There's gonna be a shakeup. It's gonna be things are shaking up. I'm leaning into the private schools. STA 2.
Wow.
CDH 3. Woodbury 4.
Wow.
There you go.
I don't love it. I don't even know if I like it, but that's what I got.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if I would have saw this, if somebody would have came to me an hour ago and said like, this is my Section 3 boys ranking, and that was it, I'd go, oh, that's pretty good ranking. Like I would potentially agree with that. So I think, aside from you going 1 to 4 and mixing it up a different way, I think that's as good as anybody's.
Yeah.
I think you're the one on cold medicine now. The fact that you chose to put St. Thomas Academy in a top 4 and not like Egan, the most like blue collar program, versus like the most blue. Like who are you? And like you're going against.
I wanted to get Egan in there. South Suburban Pride, all of it, right? South Suburban bias. They graduated Sam Simon. We talked about this earlier in the podcast. Sam Simon and their Fogo. I just don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. So I'm a tough look right now. My picks are a tough look right now, is what you're saying.
No, because when you're right, because when this all shakes up,
I know I win Juicy
Katie's
Lucy's.
right, you're gonna look like
Lucy's.
you're gonna look. Egan's gonna owe you a Juicy Lucy too.
Yeah.
So you're gonna look so smart because I'm overthinking it. I'm overanalyzing it. I'm not trusting my South Suburban bias gut, and I faded it. And again, that's why I don't like it. I
think
don't
it'd be
like
cool,
it.
Though. I think you guys are onto something about the park. I think it'd be really cool to see Park of Cottage Grove on either the boys or the girls side. Like super, super fun.
Yeah. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if we accomplished anything today. I don't know anything about Section 3 or what's going to happen. I do know they're fun. It's a fun section for boys and girls. It's a section of the people. If you are a fan of high school lacrosse, of competitive high school lacrosse, Section 3 is definitely one that you want to pay attention to.
And if CDH is hosting, go to the game.
Yeah, CDH has a great stadium. I'm also, am I remiss to say that it doesn't even really matter what the seating is in this section? It kind of it's kind of just like whatever team decides to figure it out on June 1st and like have the right mix of confidence and scheme and health and durability and everything will win these sections.
I agree with you on that.
I think you're right.
Which makes it fun. And like we talked about it with Brian too, like this section for boys and girls has not been a perennial same team winning every year. So like this is a fun one to analyze because it really could be anybody.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for tuning in again this week to Down the Alley. Thank you to our sponsors, Old Southern Barbecue and ES Lacrosse. Get your lacrosse shopping done now. Don't wait. Don't wait. Get that now. If you gotta get a head strung up, if you need something looked at, check out ES Lacrosse. Let's dial in your gear now.
Yep. I think that's all for tonight. Section 3, section of the people. We have no idea. We'll be back next week with Section 4. And go to ES Lacrosse and get your accessories. Go to Old Southern Barbecue and Snakes and Barbecue as you get ready for the high school season. Although the big game is over, we have some big news. Old Southern Barbecue is extending their playoff platter special through March Madness. 40 wings, 2 slabs of ribs, ranch dressing, and a bottle of barbecue sauce for just $89.99. So if you are hosting any of the big sporting events coming up, make sure to order the playoff platter and bring your crowd to its feet this playoff season. And make sure to tell them that DTA sent you. Are you looking for a dedicated partner for your lacrosse needs? ES Lacrosse has got you covered. If you're brand new to the game, a seasoned vet, or a dedicated lacrosse parent, ES Lacrosse is the go-to partner for Minnesota lacrosse and DTA Nation. Whether you need new gear, a restringing of your current setup, custom uniforms or apparel for your team, or one of their awesome starter sets for your brand new lacrosse player, the selection, expertise, and service at ES Lacrosse is unmatched. You can visit them in-store at one of their 3 metro locations in Woodbury, Chanhassen, and Vadnais Heights, or visit them online at eslacrosse.com.